Hello and good afternoon. Welcome, welcome. Patience Ogunbona here, also known as the visionary introverted woman. I really want to welcome you to another exciting episode of Inspiration to Achieve, where I share inspiration to help you turn your aspirations to transformation and inspire others. The insights I help and provide here is going to help you to achieve your life and business goals as well as strive. This is my desire. This is my aim today. And I'm really excited. So, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. And if you're joining us, we are talking today about value-based living. And I'll be using the word we because I'm excited that aside from me today, I shall be having some rich conversations with my guest, Jan Robberts. So I want to tell you a little bit about Jan and before he comes on board, and you will be excited to hear him speak and to hear his views on value-based leadership. So obviously, myself and Jan, we are John Maxwell team members, and we love value-based living. Hi, everyone joining me on LinkedIn. So I'm coming to you live on LinkedIn as well as Facebook. And later on, we'll have this uploaded onto my YouTube channel so you don't have to ever miss it. So you'll have a link as well where you can subscribe. So I was introducing and talking about my friend Jan, who is going to be with me today, who I'm excited to be joining me on this topic. So Jan and myself have known each other for a while. We've been in groups together, and so I know that he's going to bring on the rich conversations. So Jan also believes that values will create the powerful foundations we all need in the world today and help us to overcome a lot of the social ills that prevail in our world today. And he also believes that when the right values are adopted across countries, board of directors, government organizations, and even individuals, you are able to then take responsibility and accountability to make changes happen in the world. And we have been privileged, myself and Jan, to provide some leadership training based on values, roundtable sessions across the world. He's done that in Guatemala, Paraguay, Argentina. I've been able to do that in Costa Rica, and even in the UK here with a group of women last year. I did a roundtable where we focused on values. So I'm bringing you on today because I know that this discussion is going to be rich and valuable for you. And we're going to touch on it from the dimension of life, business, as well as leadership. And all these elements are things I work on as somebody who works with introverted women. And I know that there is a myth that introverts are not good at leadership. And therefore, a lot of topics I bring around leadership is to help a lot of introverted women step into their potential, step into their power. So what do we mean when we talk about values? Values, I love the definition of values and that I found, which says that values are principles or standards of behavior and one's judgment of what is important in life. And I think that's a key definition that I love very much. The only issue with that is what's important to me will be different from what's important to you. Hence why it is important to understand what it means to practice value-based leadership and to come on the same page. So without further ado, I'm really excited to bring on Jan right now. And let's go for it and let's enjoy this session together. So hi, Jan. Say hi so that I know that, you can be heard and you can be seen.
Yeah, well, hi, Patience. It's absolutely a privilege and a pleasure to be here with you today on your show, getting interviewed by you, and that we're both passionate about values. So it's an amazing subject, and I look forward to an amazing conversation with you today.
Yes, and also Jan is all excited, and in the next couple of weeks, the first week of May, he's getting married. He finally did the deed, and then he didn't hang around. He was very quick, and he said, I put a ring on it, but I also put you straight away into my house. No, 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 and we're ready to go. So his congratulations to Jan, and Artie, who is also a fellow John Maxwell team member. As you well know, we have the John Maxwell DNA, and it's already overflowing for Jan and Artie. So that's brilliant, brilliant. So Jan, I've said a lot of things about you, but what else should my audience know about you that they haven't yet, something interesting about you that I haven't yet said? I know there are a lot of interesting things.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, it's always interesting because talking about myself is not usually the thing I'm best at. And as many of us are not. But we know we have to do it because I think it's wonderful that everybody else gets to know us a bit better. As I said, we've known each other for a while now. We've been in some amazing groups where we've in mastermind groups and things like that together as well, which is amazing. But for starters, I'm actually very passionate, as hopefully it'll come out, passionate about people and passionate about making a difference. And as an actual entrepreneur, I currently seek to impact people in different ways with programs that serve people in all areas of society, such as self-care, personal development, and of course values-based leadership. But I'm also helping to build an international global platform that will serve millions of budding entrepreneurs. Equally exciting about that. And I collaborate with strategic partners from different countries now, because I think partnerships and collaborations are very important. We don't need to do all of this alone, especially as entrepreneurs, but to launch a transformational program that will change how values are viewed and help them to realign injustices in all kind of forms. And it'll come out a little bit more about injustices later on as well. But my very core focus is actually to give people back their voice. To step up and become more influential by discovering their own gifts and talents through my JR Speakers Club, which I've also set up. And we're also using values-based leadership, which you've already mentioned a bit about, and we'll talk a lot more into this values-based living, of course. But it's to challenge injustices around the world, such as gender-based violence, racial intolerance, diversity and inclusion issues in increases in suicide, and the need for upliftment for single parent homes, and so much more. So going into squatter camps in South Africa to raise awareness using values-based leadership was a powerful and absolutely an incredible to watch, as there were some things that I never expected, but it positively impacted people, which we all know it does, but also it impacted them in a positive way because of xenophobic attacks too. So many people actually dream to engage with youth development. Now we are actually able to do that as well with our partner, another JMT member in Bangladesh, the CKH network, who has access to more than 150 universities. Now that is all. I mean, there's plenty more, but I'm excited about those kind of areas. They all involve people, and they all involve my passion. And to walk the walk and live that kind of dream for me has become a reality, and I love life.
And I can see from what you're saying, I didn't mention that you're the founder co-founder of Care Leadership Institute. So basically you work alongside your partner, Artie, as well, who obviously you've put a ring on it, as we said. So that's also great. I shall be mentioning that a few times today because I'm all excited about it. Those are the kind of romantic stuff that get me excited. So, and I noticed that you were talking a lot and you got very passionate about certain things, like justice, for example, or like inclusion and diversity. And I know that those can be categorized as values. That's what people don't understand, is having done roundtable sessions, myself and yourself, and being through masterminds and working in the John Maxwell team, we know that there are at least certain values we've worked on, almost 40 or over 40 that we can do roundtable sessions on. So when it comes to values, I've defined it, but what would you define values as?
Well, there is of course a few areas, and people look at values and they look at principles and ethics, and people think, is that not all the same stuff? I mean, of course, it's a great question, of course, because there is so many people when they hear values-based leadership, at first they look at values and whoa, and then they say leadership and it's for them. And of course, what we've actually done over 8 years that I've been involved in values-based leadership, Artie and I have actually kind of renamed it into a sustainable personal development, which is really what it is. It grows the person. We always talk about be the change you want to see in the world, and most people haven't got an idea what it means. This of course with the theme, but it says, transformation begins with me. Because I always say to people, you're in the training business and you do all kinds of coaching and speaking and all that. How are you hoping to change people? I says, oh, whoa. I mean, I've got enough problems changing this guy. I mean, to change other people, I cannot do that. Change will happen because you want to or because you have to. And I hope that people are inspired to help themselves, to change themselves, and to do that with values, of course. But when you look at values, ethics and principles together, that really is the basics of the foundation of character as we know it. And humans are very much social beings, and that's why their interaction and behavior needs some kind of governing, if you like, because both ethics and values play a huge role in that, in the governing of people. But when you look at it, values, first of all, you said it beautifully already, but they're typically principles and standards of behavior. That's the very simple way. We're going to talk a lot more into it, and I hope it becomes a lot more clear to everybody in the conversations we will be having. But the values help people to make informed decisions about what is right and what is wrong. Now, people say ethics, surely ethics do that as well, but values actually consist more of the likes of likes, dislikes, perspectives, prejudices, and that word we've already mentioned, judgment. So they are known to shape the behavior of an individual. And the saying, thoughts become actions, actions become habits, and habits become our destiny, speaks right into that. And that's also a quote we use with every value in the process. But however, these values can easily be influenced by religion, culture, society, and so many other things. And they're still the core foundation of personality, behavior, and attitudes. Now, then we have ethics. So there is a lot of overlap, of course, with ethics and ethics, morals, and values.
So we've got ethics and morals, yes.
Yeah. So ethics is really about a code of conduct, much more to help differentiate from what is right and what is wrong. And the code of conduct is a little bit different than the intrinsic values. And even in values, there is some other areas that really come into this. But these ethics actually occur as a result of a man's evolution, and also known as morals, because morals and ethics are also on the same path. And their ethics are generally more professional, whereas values are usually much more personal. Yeah. And if you look at ethics, they are a set of moral principles, and they relate to a form of conduct. And also they are, when you look at professional side of it, these ethics can be held to law as well, because there is the law gets involved with ethics, which not so much with values. Okay, if you're outside of your values and you're, for example, you're unethical, that's also a value. But if you're unethical, you might get called into the courtroom and explain yourself one way or another. But values are principles. They are relating to standards of personal behavior. So simply, when we look at it, ethics are professionals and value are personal guidelines in life and in business. And that is really the simplest way to explain some of the difference, and I hope it'll be clear to the audience as well. And but that's it.
I like a lot of things that you mentioned there, which very important. I like the first definition you gave, and that just hit me and got me, where you said it's sustainable personal development, if you were to look at values. And maybe that actually even tips into what do you think value-based living is. But then you also talk about things like behaviors, things like character, and things like attitudes, So when we're talking about this topic, it might be that some people would think, I just need to switch off. It doesn't relate to me. It's all the things that leaders need to do. It's all the things. But you think about it and you realize that we all need to work on our behaviors. We all need to look at our attitudes, and we all need to develop the right kind of character. But you also talk about things and, put it in context as well, by differentiating between ethics, and morals. And in a lot of organizations, or even in the world today, ethics, which are governing principles, are usually what someone has said, this is set in stone. You have to do it this way because it's the right thing to do. And so you have, if you belong to a professional organization, they might say, I belong to the IIA and the ACCA, and one of the criteria or one of our ethical codes of conduct is integrity, independence, confidentiality. However, if you tipped it the other way, these are values. For example, one of my values is integrity. And it's all about then doing the right thing, and knowing the difference between the right thing and the wrong thing. So when you think about it, we have very simply something like climate change or looking after the climate. Based on your values, you do whatever you like with the climate. There are some maybe codes of conduct that have been put out there, not always enforceable because nobody comes to your house and insists that you recycle. But then in some businesses, in some places, they will fine you if you put something that is not supposed to go in the bin for the bin people to pick. You'll be reported and maybe you will pay. That means that sometimes those ethical codes are then enforceable through fines, but does it have to be that way? That's what we're trying to explore, where values are a bit loose, and values-based leadership and values-based living could be where you're really in tune with what makes a difference, what is important to you. But more importantly, as they say, you have to live with other people, like you said. So win-win situation is what is important to others as well. And how do you bring that together? So that leads me to talk about, value-based living. And, you were talking about values, and you've already put that in context in the definitions. But obviously, if we were to look at it again and break it down, the types of values would be character, your own personal character. Then basically, this is recognized across the board as what is good, good to do, and who a good person. If you were to define a good, we all have our maybe definitions of a good person, a person of good standing, of good character. Then you have personal values, which I always say this in a funny way. Authenticity is great, but some people's authentic self is not worth knowing. Let's just be frank, because if they get authentic, then you don't like their values, and if you operate with them. And then there's the work values, obviously, which every organization that wants to succeed has to give those values to their staff. So when we talk about value-based living, explain to me what that means and why it is important. We've probably touched on it, but even more emphasize that both in the private life and in working in the business world or in working in corporation. Why is value-based existence or living or leadership, why is it important, and what is it exactly?
Yeah, and I love everything you said about it already. I mean, you've touched on so many areas of it and why it's important. And you also said that there are some people who probably switch off because they think it doesn't apply to them. It's a costly mistake. I think if people switch off on values, then they're in trouble because sometimes we need to have a close look in the mirror about our values, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it. But why is it important, and what is it? Well, the very short answer about just what it is, it's living with a solid foundation of values, basic human values, and I'll elaborate a bit more about that. And why it is important is we only have to look around us, locally, nationally, and globally, and we get a daily reminder of why this is not just a nice to have anymore. It never was, but I mean, if we need reminding over the last year at least, but I mean, it's been a long time coming. And we must go back. No, not go back. We actually must go forward, because we cannot go back, and we shouldn't go back. Because if we go back, that means we don't learn anything. We need to learn from our mistakes. As you said, John Maxwell always says, fail forward. And that's only happens if you actually learn from your mistake. Is that not what they call experience in the first place? But we need to move forward to a place where we become awakened and create a new awareness of our values. See, I never say to people that I teach values. We all know about values. Even we're talking about in personal life, and I'll give some examples of that, as well as in organizational life. I always love it when you walk into a corporation and you see these beautiful values hanging on the walls. And I'm a little bit concerned when honesty is on there, because these are the values they hope that people strive towards, that they need to incorporate them. Now, surely you already see, if you expect people to be a 10, they can be a 10. But if you expect them to be a 1, you get what you expect very quickly. So surely you already expect people to come in, honest people, if you're going to employ them and work with them and have them to work for you. So some of these kind of things are very interesting when they put them on the wall. And in values-based leadership, one of the things is that we take the values off the walls and put them in the hearts and the mind of people. Not only some people, everyone. So I haven't actually worked, as I mentioned earlier, I haven't worked in squatter camps where there is hunger and xenophobia and poverty, and seeing the positive impact these simple values have made when we and then we look at diversity and inclusion, gender-based violence, single moms suffering and struggling, male suicide rates. Arthur actually mentioned it on the diversity and inclusion training we did before this with the management team. And he said, in the space of 4 or 5 months, and she came from the UK, in the male suicide rate in the UK has over the last 4 or 5 months had doubled. We're living in an area where we need to work and live values, because and there's a lot more to it. But there's people are losing hope around the world, and we all know it's a wonderful saying. Where there is hope in the future, there's power in the present. But the opposite is right as well. Where there is no hope, and the value of hope actually stays somewhere. We did it actually the other day again with a group of teenagers in Lebanon. And the value of hope actually says something that somewhere where people have no hope, the only thing you can still do is bury them. And I think we've come to in the world, they're talking about resets. I think there is a reset that we need to look at, a reset that, where are our personal values? We know about the ethics in the company and the governing sides, but where are our personal values? And when you look, in a way, the world has gone cold and to the human touch. Like, I mean, we don't even blink an eyelid anymore when there is millions of people starving. There is child trafficking, there is slavery, and ever increasing inequality. And we need to connect with empathy. We need to connect with compassion. We need to show that every person still matters. And I really believe that values-based leadership and connecting around the table with each other, the process can be explained easily, but it is a simple yet hugely impactful way to actually achieve this in any country, any culture, any religion, and the good thing is any background, because we can sit around the table and there is no judgment involved. And in the last 8 years since I've been personally involved, I have witnessed and listened to many stories of impact from small things where people just started to appreciate each other a little bit more, to major impact where family members and friends reconnected again after many years apart because of some insignificant differences that started things and got out of control. And then when people of all ages are impacted around the world and want to pay it forward, because that's also, it's not just to keep it to ourselves. You talked about leadership and that people think that leadership is for them. We both know already that leadership begins with self-leadership, and we're all leaders. The level of leadership the level of leadership you promote and show, that is different. But we are all leading in some way or another, and then we can all do with. And that's where self-development always comes in. It's also passionately personal development, and I make courses for that as well. But if we can play and pay this kind of stuff forward, where we learn stuff, and that's pure leadership, really, because real leaders don't keep the good stuff to themselves. Real leaders share it, and they actually hope that other people will even better than them. The 5 levels of leadership. The 5th level is when you help people go past you. That gets rid of your ego. But it creates a truly transformational movement where people are actually taking responsibility and standing up to make a difference in entire countries. You mentioned some already, where we're now busy, as you probably know already, we're supporting Transformation Lebanon. Arti especially, and we're working with some people in Pakistan. We were in Ireland with another JMTer who started Lift Ireland there. But the fascinating thing is, and this is, we're always talking about, I was saying the youth are the leaders of the future, and I don't know what kind of world we're planning leaving for them. But when I like last Saturday, I was actually at a virtual roundtable with 16 youth, teenagers in Lebanon, and it's amazing, and if you know anything about Lebanon, 3.5 million people, and they've got so many refugees in there, millions of refugees in there as well. But the country is in dire straits at the moment because of all kinds of internal politics and things like that, as well as everything else that happens around the world. But when you saw that, how honestly and how open and honest they are, but also how despondent they had become, and so much is already lifted their spirits now because they've been sitting around the table on a Saturday morning, even during their exams, in the middle of them. And they have conversations, and it gives them hope for a better Lebanon, and they are willing to take a major part of it. And that's also very important. And that's when we see young leaders standing up. That's when we indeed see hope and experience, and in a community where many things are broken, but hearts and souls are mending in front of our very eyes, and that's very important.
So you have said quite a few things here, and I don't want it missed, especially because people need like an image, visualization to be able to understand it. When you say what is value-based living, and you said something specifically, you said you go to organizations and they will write it on the walls, they will put it in their documents for staff. But what then needs to happen is this needs to be written on the hearts of people. And how does that happen? For me, I believe that happens very simply through modeling. You model what you say. I guess value-based living is where you are living and asking people to do as I do, not do as I say. So that even though what you say is congruent with what you do, when people see it, they can imitate it. They know it works because you have lived it. And I remember 2 years ago going into UCB. It's a Christian broadcasting radio station, and they invite their charity donors to come in because it's part of their accountability, is part of their values. And the way they do accountability is, if you are a donor to a certain level, they come and tell you and show you how your money is being used, where it is going. And they ask you to have a conversation to add your input. So that was already impressive for me. I thought they're living their values. But then I went and I met the CEO, and they say servanthood is part of our values. And when we went for lunch that day, the CEO was next to me, but he never sat down until everybody had been served. He served the salad, he served the bread, and he stood in front, and he talked about his values of servanthood. And I didn't need to listen to the lecture and the definitions from the front, because I had seen what that looked like from his perspective. And, that was very interesting. They wrote about how they work with young people. And then they talked about the young people. They brought in young people who headed the departments that reached out to young people. So when you can visually see how the values are being lived. Another way, you talked about roundtables, and you said, that you're talking to the youth and you are talking things like hope. How do you visualize hope, for example? When I did Costa Rica roundtables, I remember the person that picked me up to come to his company to do the roundtables with himself and his staff started telling me a story. And he said, I'm in a rut at the moment. Myself and my partner, we don't know whether this business will exist, and we don't have hope. So I said, well, first and foremost, I have to tell you that transformation begins with me. So what you will get today is a facilitation. I'm gonna tell you my story and how I'm living out the value of hope, and then I will invite everybody on the table to express their views. I can tell you there was a lot of tears, but rather than sit down and have a mediation, that roundtable conversation made people like himself to say, when he was putting me back, he said, all I need to do is to go is to go call my partner. We sit down and we see how do we bring hope back and do all the, and I thought it didn't need mediation. It just needed understanding what is the right thing to do. That's values or ethics, whichever way you want to put it, or morals. What is the stand that I need to take? And the stand basically is understand my colleague's perspective, understand my perspective. That's value-based living. So I liked how you've talked about it, how you've pulled together all the elements of transformation begins with you. So if you're working the values as a leader in your organization, in your business, in your family, I always say that when you picture leadership as this, the moment a young brother goes to the hospital and is introduced to his baby sister, he's a leader. Because when that baby sister begins to crawl, anywhere he goes, that baby sister is going to go. So if he's going to go and touch the electrics, guess what? He's leading the, the baby sister to the electrics. So when you think of leadership, we lead every day, and modeling for me. So I like and for you, I can see that you go around the world living your values so that I'm modeling it so that others can actually pick from that. But then adding to it, you facilitate it, which I encourage. That I think that that's what you're saying, that leaders should facilitate conversations that help people understand the values of the organization. It writes it in their heart. So that actually brings me to the other thing, which is on LinkedIn this week, I did a poll, right? And I know that you talked about stuff on the poll as well. And within the poll, I was saying, what's the importance? What are the key important elements and characteristics that for leadership? And I gave 4 options for people to vote. So the first one was vision, and I defined that as where are you going? And then valor, courage to take action. And then values underpins your actions as well as skills and knowledge. Guess what? Vision got currently ranking as the top level. And the next one is values. So I like that at least a lot of people are thinking of values, but it's trying to get your own view as to the whole conversation around the chicken and the egg, or the egg and the chicken. Which one comes first? So values or vision, which one comes first and why, in your view?
Well, again, I love the question on your poll, and that's why I took part, and I answered for all 4 of them actually. Why I thought, but I mean, yes, and I saw that vision was then already the other day. It was the highest, and then followed by values, and I understand it, of course, because I think one of the things when we practice, not only teach leadership but practice leadership as well, we need to understand before being understood. And at this time in the world, it is so important, I believe, and that we need to be there without judgment, and however difficult it may be, we need to practice these things daily, including all the values, because when you look at vision and values, for me, the thoughts I had afterwards, because it was again a great poll and a great question, and I read some of the other people as well. And when you look at it, when I look at it, I think, okay, values. I thought values are more important, which I will explain, of course. And you would expect that from me, being so engrossed in this whole values. Yeah, well, biased through experience, because we also, I also constantly, when I talk with Arti as well, we constantly expand our vision as well. And of course, you need both. You need all 4, of course, with the valor and the skills as well. But I think these 2 definitely stood out, not only because of the poll, but you don't need a vision to have values. First and foremost, there is no need to have a vision, because there's so many people who have got values. I mean, it just comes to mind just now. Mother Teresa, she had some values that she wanted to help. If she could only help just one person, now that was not really a vision of sorts. But that was her idea of helping somebody. That was more talking into her values, that she wanted to do good in the world. One person, but we know what happened, of course. But when you do have a vision, you better have a solid foundation of values, because especially if you intend to make a positive impact as a leader, because there is plenty leaders with vision in history as well, and we all know them, leaders who had a huge impact in the world, but their vision was not something that we ever want to experience again. And we all know that, and there is plenty. I mean, there was even a simple one, Jim Jones in the 70s. He had a vision, and he thought the world would come to end. He led 900 odd people into the jungle to commit suicide. Now, what kind of vision was that? That was his vision, and it came to an abrupt end. But there is many of those, and I think, and that's why I said values first, because I think every person should have values. And a helicopter going over. Every person should have values, and they should actually understand them as well, because there is so much misunderstanding between what a value actually means. And if we can come at least on the same page and have a similar understanding, but not only that, but understand each other in that particular value. That's why there's so much powerful stuff around this round table process. But if then you have a vision. And leadership, it's around the world. Leadership around the world is in trouble. It has been for a long time. It has just, what I think the last year has done is it has revealed a lot more of the failing leadership that we experience around the world. But also, on the other hand, there is a positive side to it as well, because what it has also revealed is a lot of people, especially locally, who have stood up and become leaders that they never maybe even dreamt of and never thought, but because of their value system, their need to serve other people, their need to connect with other people, their need to connect people to each other, which is so necessary just now. And people, I did a talk about intentional leadership not so long ago, and the person asked me afterwards, so who is inspiring you in leadership? I said, there's a lot of people inspiring me in leadership, but the people who inspire me most at this time, and have done for a long time, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And then I explained exactly what I said just now. The people, the stories I see, there is a lot of horror stories at the moment, but I try to look at some of the positive side. And that's why rather than talk constantly into what is happening from the way I believe, and try to bring some information, I said, well, what I can do is bring some good to the table and hope to add value to people. And I started a self-care series, which I kind of stopped yesterday because I was going to do 5 to 10 Facebook live sessions, and I did 44 in a row. So there's so much to know about self-care.
But let me just hit on one thing that you said. It's ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And so ordinary people, when we talk about vision, people look at this. I always say I'm the visionary introverted woman. And I say that because I love the bigger picture. So it's not the bigger, the better, because I believe in the power of one. But, one person can make that difference. And that difference itself is maybe their vision. And it's okay, because when people talk of vision, it's so big. And someone was saying organizations that grow bigger then become quite visionary. They have these big plans. And there's something else you said that I don't want people to miss. And the definition of values that I gave was underpins the actions. So if you're growing bigger or you're thinking big, what are the values? What is the foundation? It's so nice I think the vision is where you're going to get to. So if you're building a house, your vision is to put the roof and everything else in it. But without a solid foundation, that house is already at risk, no matter how beautiful the roof looks like. So I like all I didn't want that point to be missed, where I got your view, which is that values perhaps before vision. But if you have, I guess it's not a hard and fast rule. But I think what you're saying about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, ordinary people, because of their values of inclusion, because of their values of fairness, because of their values of saying everybody deserves to be heard, to be seen, to matter, they develop a vision. They suddenly think, I've got to do something. And suddenly they have a vision of what that something is. So from that point of view, the values then come first and drives the vision. So I believe that a lot of times that's what happens. But you also mentioned something that I don't want to miss, which is some people have visions and mess up the world. And you use Jim Jones. That's even somebody many people will have to Google to check. How about Hitler? Everybody knows Hitler.
Yeah.
And I have been to Germany and I went to the recreation of the Hitler Museum and the stories of his life and everything. And his vision was clear to see. His vision was very strong and his charisma was strong as well. And he sold people on his vision. What nobody ever asked is this value of superiority of a race in line with my values? People just thought, yay, whipped up with all the excitement, and not ask why, why am I superior? So would it have been better for them to come from a place of value? So his value was obviously dominance, was not inclusion in any way. And well-meaning people who I see now, I've met somebody who, when I went to Jerusalem, he's German, and he didn't like the fact that there's that history. And we went to the Holocaust Museum, and he was so distraught because he stood there and thought, this is not my value. And it hurts me to have this as an identity and come from such a place. But we try to explain to him, you can carve a different path. You are actually not here to regret somebody else's action. You are here to project forward. And so I like what you said about don't look back. We cannot look back. What COVID did for us is to say, I know you have been in a hurry. Stop and look at the uncomfortable truths. See the things that people have been saying. See that people have been saying, I can't breathe. See that people are hungry. See that people are dying from disease. Know how that feels like, because there is a part of the world where people are being killed by epidemics, not pandemics, epidemics, and especially places of war. We see it on telly, we can't relate, but it's all come home with COVID. We could see our mortuaries being full. We could see our A&Es. You could see it. And once they say, when you see it, you can't unsee it. So for me, values seem to be the foundation. Then you can have whatever vision you like, change the world. Let's look at some of the entrepreneurs, for example. You were saying who inspires you, right? And I was thinking the other day that I'm trying to think of Richard Branson. What was it that made him set up Virgin Radio or Virgin Music? He believed that music should be affordable to everybody. It should be cheap. It should be available. What is it that made people like Microsoft, software, computers didn't have to be these big bulky things. They had to be available, affordable to people. So those things to me are values, and they come before. Then the vision is everybody should get it. The question is why? Why is the value? Start with why, like Simon Sinek says. Why is the value? When you ask why should people go hungry? Because your value is that everybody should have food. Then the next thing is, how do I get food to the people who don't have food? That becomes your vision. And so that's the way I see it. And I wanted to make sure that I put up this. So, you've talked about it, but I want us to touch on this. Very important. People are then asking, how do I develop good values? Because we know people, we've said, have bad values. And we've given examples. Jim Jones, Hitler, bad values. So how do I focus and develop good values? So because you know yourself, and we are not born with our values. Our values are impacted by our environment, the people that influence us, bring us up. That's why leadership is so dangerous. Your parents have influenced your values. Your friends have influenced your values. Your country has influenced your values. All sorts of things. So if people ask the question, how do I develop good values? And we have some people here, comments, great conversations. Thank you, Patience and Yan. Moara is saying that. And we have somebody saying thank you, EO2 as well. Artie is saying hi, as usual, to her hobby. And Jay's, and we have Mobina. So thank you all for joining us. So yes, if people are asking, how do I develop good values? What would you say would be a daily practice of value-based living that will help people to develop good values?
Yeah, again, a great question, and everything you said as well, about leadership, and you mentioned Simon Sinek, and when you said earlier on that the CEO served you, around the table, and I looked into that, and I thought Simon Sinek, good leaders eat last, great leaders eat last, another book of his, and tremendous. But there is, and there is a lot of stuff in there, and even in leadership, when you mentioned Hitler, I always said Hitler was an amazing leader. His principles and values were 180 degree wrong. And that's where I've got where that's another reason, of course, why I said that values, proper, solid, basic human values are the foundation. Had he had them, we maybe wouldn't have been in that situation. And also, not looking back, I think we sometimes see we're not living. There is too many people live in the past. Actually, we shouldn't live in the past, but we should actually never forget the past. Because I think we can never forget the past, and we must never forget the past, because we should ensure things like that never happen again. And that's why at the moment I think we're around the world, we're in a very dangerous state. But that's for a totally different conversation. That we cannot let this happen again, and that's for good people to speak up, and good people with values. So I love the question you said there. And you brought so much good in there, that about the whole value system and how we should live the value system, and you've mentioned that already, and which is absolutely true, and I 110% agree with it as well. My first answer about how you develop good values would be the very simplest thing: sit around the table with me. Sit around the table in the values-based leadership process, because to get good values, sometimes we need to understand them better. And that's why I said we don't teach value. It's a reawakening of the awareness, because we all know what listening, integrity, honesty, developing people, attitude, and the list goes on and on. Transparency. There is so many values. We've got 48 of them. Empathy, and Artie wrote one about compassion, which is amazing.
Oh, I love the value of compassion. Yeah, Artie. So, just saying. Thumbs up, Artie.
And I mean, that was the one value that actually started the whole movement of transformation in Lebanon, by the way, in a webinar we did. But I would say to people, actually connect with us. You and me as well. Connect with us and find out how you can come and sit around our table, because I know I speak for you as well. There's always a chair at our table. There's always an opportunity, and it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what age you are, because I think to sit around the table and not only learn about values, but to learn about how others think about these values, to get perspective from different people of different ages, different cultures, no judgment. That for me would be the simple answer, and I recommend anybody and everybody does this, because I know we all need them. We talk about transformation of entire countries. Let's start about transformation of entire people and entire families and entire communities first, because that's where it starts, of course.
At home.
Yes, of course. And introspection and asking yourself what really is important to you, and that's and also to think about what would you never compromise on, because and that probably is relating to something that's important to you, and that there is different kinds of values as well. Your values and things you value, they go hand in hand, but they're not necessarily all the same, of course. But it certainly might take some time, but because of one size doesn't actually fit all. But I'm sure that there are values that every person should have in their arsenal. That's not the football club, by the way. Have in their arsenal, honesty,
their toolkit.
integrity. Yeah.
Because I don't support Arsenal or any football team, just in
No,
case
no, no,
you
no. But
think we
just in case
mean the
people thought,
football team. Your
yeah,
toolkit,
yeah,
your toolkit of living.
yeah.
What key values? Could we just name 7 that we feel like this is about character, this is about moral stuff? If we were to put 7 different values that we probably, and again, that might be biased, but people can have their own 7. But if you were to name 7, just naming 7 key core values that people should have, what would you say would be 7
I
that you
mean,
could name?
the first ones that come to mind straight away is honesty,
Yeah.
integrity, respect. I mean, Artie talked about it this morning. Just respect all by itself. It says we don't need to like everybody. And it's a saying by Artie. He says you don't need to like everybody you come into contact with, but the way you show respect is a direct reflection on your character, not theirs. And the other saying she's got in a diversity training, at the level of respect, everyone is equal. And if we could just show, at least be respectful, because you can't expect other people, and that's the same with every value. You can't expect other people to be honest and yet you don't do it. You mentioned that anyway, to walk the walk, and the CEO serving, when he talks about servant leadership, you don't, the same as a leader in values, it's the same. You don't need to tell people you're honest. If you're not honest, they'll know. You don't need to tell people that you're a good listener when you actually just talk all the time. So that walk the walk, values is the same. You don't ever have to tell people, but that's 4. And then I think humility is also a wonderful value to have. And it's easy to have humility when you've got very little, but when you get bigger and bigger and things grow, to still have that humility. And we see so many people who go off the rails with that too. Responsibility is another one that just come to mind. I think we need to take responsibility for our own lives, because the only person we can actually change is the person looking in the mirror every day. So if we can take responsibility for ourselves and actually stand up and say, we all have a destiny. We know that, in the values we talk about it. We all have a purpose in this life, yet most people will never fulfill it. And that's because the first person they don't ask good questions from is the person in the mirror. And then discipline is another. They come together with responsibility, but there are other things as well. And developing people. I think when we focus on ourselves, I think we need to, sometimes when we're in trouble, we need to focus on other people. Then our troubles don't seem half as bad. And when we do this, and that's what I've talked to some of these ordinary people doing extraordinary things, that they have so many problems themselves, but they feel so much better because they started to concentrate on other people. They started helping old people, make sure they got shopping in, because they wouldn't dare leave the homes, and ill people and people who got mental problems.
And that
They can't
happened
even
a
leave the
lot
home.
during COVID, where people step out of their comfort zone, stepped out and took the risk and helped a lot of people. Of course, we saw the example in maybe the health services that were going in there, being very, very close, being exposed. I remember when, for example, Diana used to go to places where people had AIDS, and she would hug people and touch people. And that was like unusual then. But think about what COVID did, where everybody had to find, the health professionals, you could see them, whether they had PPE, wear in the beginning or not, because there was shortage of that. They were just in there saving lives, just doing what they had to do. And people, you saw the value of kindness and compassion come out in humanity as it needed to be, because something pushed it out of us. So I don't want people to miss this. You said honesty, you said integrity, you said developing others, you said respect, and you really explained respect, and you talked about listening. And also, I guess, in the world today, I would want to say that a good value to have is collaboration, whether you're in an organization or in government or individuals. A good value to have is collaboration. Why? Because, like the John Maxwell team, we say one is too small a number for significance. And it's by the coming together and pulling resources. And that will align with another value, which is inclusion, and having a diverse pool of talents. So these are some of the things that you could bring to your leadership. You could, if you're collaborating with your people, if you are a leader who says collaboration is our value, what do? It means that people come into the meeting thinking, I'm going to work with my leader and he's going to work with me. So we're going to work together to achieve this. So I think for me, those are some positive values. But I also want to draw some things before I allow you to have like the final word as well. There is this phrase that I used to hear and I used to use a lot, and it used to help me. Do unto others as you want done unto you, right? I used to hear that and I thought that is great. But then I had somebody say, do unto others as they would want done unto. That is a higher level. So basically, and I've used that value, that conversation in marriage, because I would say to my husband, it's okay for you, this is your style and your personality, but guess what, it doesn't work for me. So I don't want you to feel like because it works for you, it's okay. Because you don't need something, that makes it okay. So what I want you to do is to say, I don't need it, but I know she needs it. So I'm just gonna think about that and give it to her. And I think when you think about adopting values, that's how you should think. Not doing unto others as you want done unto. Sometimes that is good, but take it a step further. How do they want to be treated? That will solve a lot of race problems, it will, because you think, how does a person who is not the same color as me, who has a different culture, rather than think, okay, I should treat them the way I believe. What about asking them, how do you want to be treated? How do you want to do this? And that helps. Then the other thing is, you mentioned it, which is seek to understand. Oh, I also have the plane flying here today. I think plane sound over time. It's time to travel. The doors are open. Hi, Florence. Florence says hi. So basically, I like the part where you said, seek to understand rather than be understood. That's a very good value. It's linked to listening and very, very important. And you talked about what is important to you. And I think because transformation begins with you, how you adopt values is by saying what's important to me, and you said not compromising on it, being very firm on holding on to it. If honesty is important to you as a value, how are you going to demand that of yourself to start with? So that when you find yourself in compromising situations, are you going to be aligned to your values or disaligned with your values? And once you can demand that of yourself, what we don't demand of ourselves, we struggle to demand of others because we don't want to be found out. It makes us vulnerable, asking people to do what we haven't done, except, of course, you're a dictator. And that's a different ball game, or a narcissist. There are all sorts of other personalities we would go into. But, once you're not living in integrity, it's hard to demand integrity of other people. So if you're trying to live a value-based life, ask yourself, what is important to me? Now, if what is important to you is negative, like we've said in some instances, be willing and open to come to the table, to Jan's table, to understand respect, to understand other people's view, to come to my table, because I'm hosting a leadership, the Visionary Female Leader Masterclass and Roundtable, where people can really talk about these things for themselves, where we explore some of the values. So, for example, a value like ambition. It's nice to have ambition, but how does this relate to Jim Jones? Like you said, his ambition was to bring people, create a new world. But how did that help people in the end? Their new world was not having a life, so, you link it with all sorts of things. So, yeah. So what would you say, for us to conclude this and leave a message with people about values, giving you your final, encouragement to people about this? Because like you said, it takes time. It takes intentional living, and it's not easy. So what would you say in terms of helping people adopt value-based living or value-based leadership? What would you say?
Yeah, and again, a wonderful summary and the additional value you've just added to this whole process already, because when you mentioned listening as well, and I tell people all the time, everything is about listening, building relationships, compassion as well. That's another great value. But listening itself, we can't build. We build a relationship by listening to people. We build by asking better questions, and then we ask better questions by listening. So there is a whole lot to do with real listening. Artie actually said something this morning, which I wrote down. She said, people will only listen to hear. They will not usually hear to listen. And that was something wonderful. Just summarize it. She used it this morning. And I always write things, when our friend Mikael as well, we have great conversations, and I always write stuff down because he's full of wisdom as well. And I love to
think
learn.
that is a good practice, Jan, as you are also getting married, make sure that, yes, dear,
Oh yeah,
just take it further with the yes, dear.
For sure. So. But, and yeah, but I mean, we fully respect each other as well. And of course, over the last 6.5 years, when we actually met at John Maxwell training, of course. But when I look, just when I look already, and I think we can learn a lot right now. And of course, most of us have been fortunate to have been instilled values from our parents as well. Values such as respect and honesty and integrity, hard work, family and hope. Those kind of things, and then where we work, and from our friends and that. But in the end, it comes down to the way we actually. I mean, it doesn't really matter where you live, what your background is, and what country you live in, because that values-based living is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight, but we need to first be open to it, because that will make. Even in the UK, as we're talking now, in any country, because if it happens in Ireland, people say, but they see Guatemala and Paraguay and all those kind of countries, yeah, but poverty and all that. Why Ireland? But I mean, every country, where it's a Western countries where leadership and in total is suffering badly. And it is because of a solid, no foundation of. It's like having built a house in a swamp. There is no foundation, and it's crumbling bad, big time. But it's not just because of the current situation, but because of the way humanity has been on a slippery slope for a very long time. And so we can do this together, and we must do this together because. And it starts with the thought, of course. We need to start thinking differently, because the thinking gives you the action. Then, as I said, thoughts become actions, actions become habits, and habits become our destiny. What do you want your destiny to be? What kind of way can you start thinking a little bit different today? I'm not talking about completely change your mind to something, but what can you think into today that will make sure that you will be able to live a better life tomorrow? Because the only thing we can ensure that tomorrow will be better if we do something better about ourselves today. But I think we just need to get our thinking boots on. Let's start to change ourselves and bring more values back into our own, definitely in our own lives, and let us live those values and value other people. And I'm fully convinced that when we do, this world will once again become a better place to live. We don't only owe it to ourselves, to our children, but we owe it to our future generations. Remember, transformation begins with me.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I just want to echo, what you said, because you talked about hope. And I think underpinning everything else that we've been through, let hope be that value. Let leaders in organizations give their staff hope. Let fathers and mothers and, sisters and brothers give each other hope. If we can think in hope terms, then we are actually not looking back and being paralyzed by the past or by reality. We can project forward. We can move forward in hope. So I believe that, that word that you said, hope, very important to use. And, it's been brilliant, to get all this. And we've shared a lot. For me, I feel like it's a topic I still want to do justice to. So I will have conversations with the audience again about values and alignment, and tell my own story. How do I practice value-based living? Give maybe a concept and understanding. And also, I just want to remind you guys, everyone watching, that I'll put a link and you can check more on Jan, and he's talked about 44 videos he's done on self-care. You won't lack for knowledge for self-care at all. So if you link up, you'll be able to locate those. We'll put a link for you to access all the things that Jan is about so that you can find out more about him. And maybe you'll also be able to sneak peek the pictures of the wedding when it's done. You don't want to miss that. I'm looking forward to sneak peeking because I can't go to South Africa or wherever it's going to be holding. But also, I'll put a link as well. And this is for women. I'm sorry. It's just nice. Women like to chit chat together. I would have brought men in, but you can always do some stuff with Jan if you want. But for me, if you're a woman, especially if you're an introverted woman who is struggling to step into your potential as a leader, and you want to understand your leadership style, your leadership gaps, I want to invite you to join me for the Visionary Female Leader Masterclass and Roundtable Sessions, which is a 2-day session. Very exciting. I have plans maybe to bring in somebody else on the second day, but it will be taking place on May 6th and May 7th, 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. GMT. So there'll be a link as well there. But more than that, if you've dropped in and out of this and you think, I really want to listen to it, there's some nuggets I need. Great. We've got you covered. You don't have to look too far. There will be a link for you to connect on YouTube to my channel, and there you will have every single video I've done, my guests, everything, and you can access this video, and that will be available latest tomorrow for you to access and be able to, watch it on the go. In future, I'm planning to make this available so you're watching it almost like 360. You can watch on any platforms, which we're coming to you on LinkedIn and Facebook or YouTube, and then you can have it on a podcast as well, so you listen while you're going. So I want to say a big, big thank you to my guest, Jan. It's always a pleasure talking and sharing ideas, especially on things that we're both passionate about, which is value-based. So thank you very much, Jan, for being here today. Yeah.
And I just want to thank you for an amazing interview, an amazing conversation. And I need to watch the recording as well, because I need to write down all the wisdom you added to me today. And I appreciate you. You're a dear friend, and I wish you well with your course. And I think women should actually sign up to your course, because when you get women together in a room, I know when we get together in a room, you add so much value, and I know you've got much value to add to the women you will have in your room in your conference. So I wish you good luck, and I know it's going to be an amazing insight for most women who will decide to come and join you.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we'll be the change makers in the room that will make a difference with whatever conversations we have. Yeah, and thank you so much for all those compliments. And same as well, I don't like missing, you around when we're around together on the table having conversations. Very, what I call rich conversations. So thank you very much. As it is our culture, before we say goodbye together, as it is my culture or way of doing things with inspiration to achieve, I like to leave you with some thinking. And this time is coming from Steve Covey, who we have quoted a few times about seek to understand rather than to be understood. And his principle around the win-win principle, which means you win, I win. I love that. So he says this about values. And I want to leave you guys with this word. It says, peace of mind comes when your life is in harmony with true principles and values, and in no other way. I'll say that again. Peace of mind comes when your life is in harmony with true principles and values, and in no other way. So thank you for watching, both of us. Thank you for spending your time with us. We are both rooting for your success, and we wish you all the very best. Take care and God bless.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.